Hi, welcome back to Fresh Faces, New Ideas. My name is David. If you're new to the channel or you want to keep up to date with all the stuff that I put on Twitter and on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Please follow me on Twitter at Faces Ideas. Now, in this video, we're going to go over Candace Owens' 10-minute video about George Floyd and Ma'Khia Bryant. Now, I knew this video was coming. You just because of how she is and the previous videos she's done on George Floyd. So in this video, she's going to make some statements. We're going to go talk about them. Now, the reason I haven't covered Ma'Khia Bryant yet is, one, I was waiting for the live stream, and two, I was waiting for more information. A lot of times, these shootings are more cut and dry than this. This is one of those that is not so cut and dry, and I'm going to go over that in my live stream on Friday at 5 p.m. EST. I don't know at what point in the live stream I'll cover it, but it is something that I'm going to cover. So let's go look at this Candace Owens video, and let's see where we go from there.
And just get right into this because you know what we are going to cover today. We obviously have to cover the George Floyd trial conclusion, which is that Derek Chauvin is guilty on all counts. And
now let's be clear. This framing is wrong. It is wrong because George Floyd wasn't on trial. George Floyd is dead. The person on trial is Derek Chauvin. So by framing it this way, you're starting with the dishonesty. George Floyd is not the one on trial. We're not judging his history. We're not judging what he has done. George Floyd is no longer here. He can't defend himself. So you're shadowboxing with a ghost. Literally shadowboxing with a ghost. The person on trial was Derek Chauvin, not George Floyd.
I have to appreciate people that were trying to create a pressure campaign for me on Twitter saying, I wonder what Candace is going to say. Even Republicans agreed that this was the right call. I don't care who agrees that this was the right. I don't care if it's a Republican. I don't care if it's a Democrat. I don't care if it's a white person. I don't care if it's a black person. I am not so much of an intellectual coward that because the mob decides something, because the lie about George Floyd.
This is actually really indicative of what Candace believes. She's pushing this out that says, I don't care what everyone else is deciding. Well, unfortunately for you, Candace, that's not how America works. He went through the justice system, not George Floyd. George Floyd is dead. He didn't get the chance to go through the justice system in this particular instance. Derek Chauvin went through the justice system. He had a defense. He had lawyers, and they defended him, and they gave his case. The reason he lost is because he was overwhelmingly guilty. And look, I know just even in the side, there's the picture Derek Chauvin did not receive a fair trial, and we know that you don't believe that he received a fair trial. But as I've covered when you were complaining about with Tucker, Derek Chauvin actually had more advantages than George Floyd did in this trial. And George Floyd was not on trial. Why did Derek Chauvin had more advantages? Well, George Floyd's criminal drug history was allowed to be admitted into evidence. But it's somewhere between 18 and 22 complaints of police brutality and use of force that Derek Chauvin had were not allowed. That's not a fair trial.
The way that he lived his life has become so big that we just have to now accept it as the truth. And believe me, this is a lie. Nancy Pelosi yesterday said, quote, thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your...
So this is the crux of what she's going to argue. It's going to be George Floyd did bad things in his life, so therefore we should not whitewash this, which I agree with. You should not whitewash his past. But however, what she's arguing is that his death doesn't matter at all, and that what happened to him was justified because of things that happened in his past. The other thing is what she's about to say about Nancy Pelosi. I agree. Nancy Pelosi should not have said that. I actually have a video on it. I don't understand why she can't talk like a human being. It was a really stupid thing to say. It was just bad phrasing all around.
Life for justice. She also said, quote, that his name will always be synonymous with justice. George Floyd's name will always be synonymous with justice. You have got to be kidding me.
Look, I'm sure if you had asked George Floyd if he wanted his name synonymous with justice this way, he would have said no. The reason his name is synonymous with justice is because an injustice was done to him, and it is a repeated injustice. And he was one of the rare cases where justice was served in this case. So yes, George Floyd is synonymous with justice in this sense. There's different ways of thinking about how justice is.
Tell me it doesn't matter. It does matter. This is the most important part, that he is now becoming synonymous with justice. Let me remind you guys, I've done it before, right? When the media was spinning all the lies, and the media first came out and they said, oh, George Floyd was just getting his life together. He moved to Minnesota. He got released from prison in 2014. He was just getting his life together. You remember that? Do you guys remember that media depiction of St. George, who was just doing things for kids and just loved the kids and really was trying to set a good example and was just getting his life together? Until I reminded people of what his actual record was, because it became apparent to me that there was a reason that they were not producing the police footage. Because
so here's where she's wrong too. So look, George Floyd was not a perfect person. Everyone can agree to that. We don't have to go through all of his history to explain exactly, how bad he was. However, he still did not deserve to die in the way that he did over what he was killed over. That's the difference. Also, she's perpetuating this idea that the media wouldn't release the body footage. That's not how it works. The police released the body footage. We just saw it. The Michaela Bryant one was within a day. The Dante Wright one was within a day. The reason the police footage wasn't released in the Derek Chauvin case is because it ran counter to what the police actually said happened. And it ran counter to what we saw in the other person's filming of it. And it didn't help his case either. So yes, this idea that the police footage was being hidden because it shows a big bad secret is just not true, because it was out. I think it might have been used in evidence for the defense.
They wanted to make sure that the lie was perpetuated around the world and repeated over and over again before the truth could get up from bed and put its shoes on. And here is the truth. Here is the person whose life and whose name is now synonymous with justice.
Okay, so before she reads this, let's be clear. It is irrelevant what his past was. Nothing in his past was relevant to what happened with him meeting Derek Chauvin. Because look, she's going to go into and discuss all the things George Floyd do. Now remember, and he was not a good person. He was arrested a couple times. But remember, every single time he encountered an officer and was arrested, he made it out alive until this one. That's why this one is different.
Nancy Pelosi. George Floyd has a rap sheet, and I'm going to remind you guys of it again today. He was arrested for delivery of a controlled substance. He was arrested and put into jail. He was arrested for theft. He was arrested for theft again. He spent 10 months and 10 days in jail. He was arrested for failure to identify. He spent 15 days in jail. He was again arrested for possession of a controlled substance, less than 1 gram of cocaine. He was then arrested for trespassing, no forcible entry. He was arrested for delivery of a controlled substance. He was arrested for possession with intent to manufacture or distribute, another 30 months in jail total. He was arrested for aggravated robbery with a dangerous and deadly weapon. And
okay, before she goes into that one, let's be clear. Almost every single one of these, as she said, was a drug crime. Now, if we didn't have such strict drug laws, it's possible these arrests wouldn't have happened. It's possible he would not have had to have the medical addiction that he did, or the drug addiction. Now, look, let's be very clear. I'm not advocating for the theft. I don't know the exact circumstance of theft. I don't know if it was petty larceny or if it was grand larceny or what the theft was. But one of them was failure to comply, or it was failure to stay to ease. He was in jail for like 10 days. So almost all of these, up until this last one, are inconsequential, and the reasoning is because of how our drug laws are. He probably wouldn't have been arrested for any of these prior to this last one, which, let's be clear, I'm not defending. I'm also saying it's irrelevant to what happened.
Has really got to be the most significant arrest for me because of how sick what he did was. Ready? Here's a statement. At this time, a black Ford Explorer pulled up in front of the complainant's residence. The complainant that we're talking about, the woman, had somebody knock on her door and say that they were from the water department. And then that person forced their way into her home. And then a Ford Explorer pulled up. And there were 5 other black males that exited this vehicle and proceeded to the front door. The largest of these suspects forced his way into the residence. This is George Floyd. Forced his way into the residence, placed a pistol against the complainant's abdomen, and forced her into the living room area of the residence. The large suspect then proceeded to search the residence while another armed suspect guarded the complainant, who was struck in the head and side areas by the second armed suspect with his pistol after she screamed for help. I should also mention that there was a toddler in the residence.
Okay, let's go over that. So, he broke the law. And you know what? He got arrested for it, but he didn't die. Also, when she was talking about the woman got struck, that wasn't George Floyd. She said that. And then the third thing, there was a toddler. Candace, are you upset when the police throw flashbangs into babies' cribs? No? Didn't think so. So why do you care about them now? Oh, it's because it's a black guy doing the crime. That's why.
At the time that this happened, a toddler that was traumatized by what George Floyd did. A woman who was traumatized by what George Floyd did. Various people who were traumatized throughout the life of George Floyd. He left a wake of victims.
We don't know that. Nothing you said even qualifies for that. So we know the robber one definitely had a victim, but the other ones, 3 of them were like he had the drugs on him. One of them is he was selling drugs, and then one of them was he was manufacturing drugs. So almost all of the victims are him.
That is what happened. He had so many victims throughout his life, but right now, the world has decided that he's just a wonderful human being. You're not allowed to talk about his record. Not allowed to talk about anything.
No, it's not. Look, let's be clear. Nobody is saying you can't talk about George Floyd's record. There's a difference between looking at his record and whether it has anything to do with what is currently happening. And the answer is it didn't, because the thing that you don't seem to grasp is the reason he had a record is because when he encountered those officers while he was doing something wrong, he survived. He did not survive meeting Derek Chauvin.
There are children that are running around with George Floyd shirts. There are murals that have been constructed dedicated to George Floyd because his name has now become synonymous with justice. I guess my question is, justice for who?
Justice for the people who have also been murdered by the police and have not received justice. That's what it's synonymous with. Look, a lot of times when people are killed or they die, their history gets whitewashed. I'm not saying this is a good thing. You can look at presidents, you can look at athletes, you can look at just look at people who have their name in history. They're very often whitewashed. You whitewashed Hitler. So yeah, it's part of a movement. People aren't advocating for George to be a saint or something. It's just not relevant to what happened.
How do I do that? How do I live a life so that people say Candace Owens' name is synonymous for justice?
Look, the answer to this, and there's almost no way this doesn't get taken out of context at some point or now. The way you get synonymous with this type of justice is if you die. So Candace Owens, if you're actually saying, how do I become synonymous with justice in the way George Floyd did, you need to be murdered by a police officer. And then that police officer has to do it in such a gruesome way that it sparks a massive movement in order to fix the police. And then from there, you have to have the person who murdered you go to trial and have people like you defend him. And then that person goes guilty. That's how you get justice. Your name synonymous like justice like George Floyd. You have to be murdered in a spectacularly brutal way on front of the world.
It's not telling the truth. People hate that. People say you're not allowed to say it. You're not allowed to talk about who this person actually was because the media has agreed on a narrative before the truth has gotten out about who this man was. Getting his life together. Is anybody still buying that anymore? Oh.
Look, here's the other thing. This idea that the media is silencing things. You have a massive platform, either on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, or I don't know who you were with before you were with the Daily Wire. But you could go on, you literally were on Tucker Carlson like 2 days ago. If you wanted to put this out, you could. How many views did your Instagram video have, or Facebook, or whatever it was? Millions. You're not silenced. You have a massive reach, unfortunately.
No, never mind. It actually turns out that at the time of his arrest, he had fentanyl in his system. He also had methamphetamine in his system. We also learned that the week prior, he had an overdose. But none of that matters. Because now...
You know why that doesn't matter? Because you're not going to bring it up because of, obviously the truth and what cares matter. It doesn't matter because when the medical examiners who testified in court said, was it the fentanyl that killed him? The guy said, yeah, if he had been by himself and we just found him dead, we would have said fentanyl killed him. But that's not what happened. He met Derek Chauvin. Derek Chauvin killed him. That's what killed him. Not the fentanyl. There was multiple people who were on the stand, professionals, who said it was not the fentanyl who killed him. Because that's not how fentanyl kills you, is the way he died. So yeah, he has fentanyl in his system. He had an overdose in the past. That's not what killed him.
We live under mob rule. Mob rule just says that if a black man dies and a white person is around while that black person dies, it is a racially motivated crime. They've never proved that. Nothing about this was about race.
She's actually correct here. This was not a racially motivated crime. It was still a crime, and I imagine you probably wouldn't even be talking about this if this was a white person who had this happen to them by the police. But let's be clear. The issue is not whether Derek Chauvin was inherently a racist. The question was, did Derek Chauvin murder George Floyd? And the justice system did its course and said, yes, he did.
At all, but it doesn't matter because now George Floyd has been propped up, and this is what we have to agree on. Nobody's allowed to tell the truth. Why are they doing this? Why can't we honestly have an assessment and come to an agreement? By the way, I would have been perfectly comfortable if people said Derek Chauvin was guilty of manslaughter.
Okay, but here's the thing. It doesn't matter what you're comfortable for. The way the justice system works, it doesn't care what pundits like you say. It doesn't care what pundits like I say. It doesn't care what pundits like Ben Shapiro says. It doesn't care what pundits like people on CNN say. The prosecutors brought these charges against him, and they pressed their case against the charges. And the jury listened to them, and they listened to the defense, and they decided he was guilty on all of them. I didn't think he was going to be guilty on all three. But I didn't think he was going to go. So what we have here is two massive misunderstandings. One, she seems to have a fundamental misunderstanding of how the justice system works. And two, she seems to believe that because George Floyd had done some bad things in the past, he deserved to die. And just stop beating around the bush and say it. Because both of those things are wrong.
Comfortable with that charge. I'm not comfortable with the lies that have been told repeatedly about who this man was. If you care about Black lives, if you're watching us thinking, Candace, I just care about Black lives, then why can't we discuss Black criminality at the same time? Because usually on the other end of Black criminality is a Black victim. That was the case with Jacob Blake.
They do. In this particular case, it's not relevant. It has what does black on black crime have to do with this particular case? Nothing. The only reason you bring up black on black crime is because you believe all black people are inherently violent. You believe in 1350. You don't actually have a solution. Your solution is stop being so black and violent. There's systemic issues that come from this. Because if you look at 1350, which is they're 13% of the population, but they're 50% of the criminal charges. You can either come to one of two conclusions. Either black people are inherently more criminal, and there's no evidence of that they're inherently more criminal, because the same statistics used to be for other marginalized communities, or there's some deeper systemic issues that need to be looked at. So once again, black on black crime has nothing to do with this case.
That was the case over and over again with George Floyd. That's also the case with And let's talk about the person that was trending all last
Oh,
night.
also, I don't know what Jacob Blake has to do with the George Floyd thing, and I don't know the circumstances. All I remember about the Jacob Blake thing was the guy shot him in the back. So there's that.
And all this morning, Ma'Khia Bryant, is that her name? The woman, the young woman that they're now.
Pause very quickly. Ma'Khia Bryant was 16. So this is something Republicans and conservatives do all the time. If you're black, you're an adult, regardless of how old you was. Adam Toledo, or the kid in Chicago, was 13. He was a man. This little, she's 16. She's still legally a child. She's a girl. She's a woman, according to Candace Owens. The girl that Matt Gaetz allegedly sex trafficked was a 17-year-old woman. They're still children. Kyle Rittenhouse is also a child. If you're under 18, you are legally a child. The only possible definition you can give them to be an adult is if they're Jewish and they get bar mitzvah, because under Jewish understanding, once you're bar mitzvah, you're an adult at 13. And the reason they say that they're older is because they want to make you think that they're more dangerous than they are. And let's be clear, I am not going to defend what this little girl did. I also don't know the full context of it. So hopefully by tomorrow, there'll be more context. My issue with this, and this is why I didn't jump on this when it started. We didn't know the full context, and I don't condone what she did. My issue is, and continues to be, the use of force by police officers. Now, if this was an isolated incident where it's the first time a police officer encountered somebody with a knife, and they had no training on this, and they had no other response other than to fire on this person and kill them, totally different conversation. That's not what happened here. There have been plenty of other cases where similar things have happened, and the officer has managed to subdue the situation without using lethal force.
Saying a 16-year-old girl in Columbus, Ohio, who was shot on Tuesday by police. Did you guys see the clip of her mother? She was shot and killed by police because she was attempting to stab another girl. It's on camera. She was a knife-wielding maniac. But
remember this phrasing that she's using, because she's going to change her tone. Also, we don't know that. We only know what we've seen on the body camera. We don't know any other circumstances of what was happening. We don't know that she was a knife-wielding maniac. We could have just... The thing with the police is they very often encounter people on their worst day. So this was this girl's worst day, apparently. So it doesn't... We can't just subscribe to using terms like knife-wielding maniac. It's dehumanizing her because we don't have that information.
Details don't matter. Don't forget. Because her mother came out and said that Ma'Khia had a motherly nature about her. She promoted peace. Ma'Khia Bryant's mother wants you to know.
I also want you to remember, this is Pam Bondi describing Kyle Rittenhouse. A little boy trying to protect his community. Let's see if I can find the exact... Okay, anyway, she described him as cleaning off the graffiti and just helping taking care of the community. So that's fine for Kyle Rittenhouse, who murdered 2 people, but this girl, who we don't know what what was going to happen. She's a bad person, and she deserves to die because she's a knife-wielding maniac with no evidence to prove that, other than what we've seen in the video and no background.
That the knife-wielding maniac that you saw is not who she really was. Maybe in that moment she was trying to kill somebody, but the point that we should be...
That's not what it is. It's in that moment she was doing something wrong. Let's be clear. I'm not advocating for this. And this is not to what I was saying earlier about George Floyd's past not being relevant. George Floyd's not relevant because of something we know what the outcome of this was. We need to understand what was happening in this case. We don't know what happened. That's why these things are not comparable.
Focused on is that Ma'Khia Bryant liked to promote peace in her spare time, right? I mean, this is like, I feel like we have now tapped into fiction. Like now we have to just accept fiction. It doesn't matter because Ma'Khia Bryant was black and she died at the hands of a police officer. And that's all that matters now. People want to come out and they want to support Ma'Khia Bryant. Maybe she too, like George Floyd, will be.
No, look, there's a different type of support. There's plenty of people who are saying, oh, the cops overreacted or the cops did nothing wrong. I don't agree that the cops did nothing wrong. I think they absolutely did the wrong thing by going to force. However, I would love for somebody to explain, once we have more information, what the other ways, like I would love to see the training that he's supposed to get in order to deal with this type of situation, for some way for him to react to this differently. Because we've seen evidence that other things like this have happened. The bigger problem is that it's another person killed by the police. The fact that she's black is bad for the optics, but it doesn't go against the idea that she should not have died.
Buried into a gold casket. Maybe eventually one day Nancy Pelosi will say that Ma'Khia Bryant's name will be synonymous with justice. Let me tell you what is actually happening in America at this time. And if you're a Black American, you better pay attention. Right now in America, the goal is to make sure that Black people love and support criminality. That is the goal. The express goal now is to make Black people believe that
who? Nobody has expressed this. Only you expressed this idea, or people on the right. The goal for the African American community is equality, because there's systemic and issues that they're facing, and you're just ignoring them or whitewashing them.
Should be in the streets rioting and looting and demanding justice for criminals, right? Because that is what these people are. They're criminals. George Floyd was in the process of committing a crime. I'm not saying he deserved to die. I don't think anybody deserved to die.
You absolutely are. That is exactly what your argument is. He deserves to die because he was a bad person and he had he left a whole bunch of victims and he deserved to die. That is exactly what your argument is. That is exactly what people like you argue all the time.
I think he deserved to be arrested. They attempted to arrest him. Did you forget that part? Have you seen the full video of his arrest? The media refuses to show the full video that shows the police tried to put him into the vehicle multiple times, and he resisted arrest by saying, I'm claustrophobic, because he had just ingested fentanyl.
Oh, so that means he just needs to be killed. They should have just shot him in the head then.
That thing that's 100 times more potent than morphine, he had just ingested it because he didn't want to again get caught with a controlled substance, as he had done repeatedly throughout his life. Let's ignore a testimony from his girlfriend who said that they were both addicted, which, by the way, that is sad. Drug addiction is sad.
It's not that was ignored. It also had nothing to do with how he died. That's not how he died. So you're cherry picking arguments from the case, but the fact is the American justice system went through its course, and in this case he was found guilty. Not George Floyd. George Floyd was not on trial. George Floyd is dead. The guy who killed him was found guilty.
Can be talking about drug addiction. We should be talking about drug addiction. That would be a meaningful discussion, but instead, let's ignore all of these things that would help us fix Black America. Let's not talk about drug abuse. Let's not talk about drug dealers. Let's not talk about criminality. Let's not talk about why Ma'Khia Bryant had a knife and was trying to stab a woman to death.
Oh, we know why. You told us. She's a knife-wielding maniac. That was what you just said. It wasn't even 3 minutes ago. That's why Ma'Khia Bryant was doing it, Candace. You just said it. Why do you suddenly want more information now? Look, at no point during this have you said anything about these issues that you're now purporting to care about. Because you're trying to cover your ass.
Let's just talk about Black victimhood. Because the discussion about Black victimhood almost guarantees us that in the future, Black neighborhoods are only going to get worse. When you start celebrating criminals, that is, of course, what is going to be the end result. We're going to have more Black death. We're going to produce more Black failures because we're not allowed to talk about the truth anymore.
I have to ask you this. Before the George Floyd protest, was George Floyd a celebrity? No, he wasn't. Why? Because they weren't celebrating his criminality. They were arguing that he shouldn't have died.
And Republican and Democrats are even saying that this is good, right? So let's not talk about it. It's just been agreed. The lie has been agreed upon. Don't say anything. If you tell the truth, Candace, you're a bad person. I don't care what I am called.
No, you are a bad person. You're a bad person not because you tell the truth. You're a bad person because in this case, you're actively arguing against the truth. And by constantly spewing that he died of fentanyl, you're actually going against what the U.S. justice legal system decided killed him. And what experts said killed him. So yes, you're not speaking the truth. And that's what you can't handle.
Because right now in this country, we are facing a pandemic of cowardice because people are too scared once the mob says that this is what must be said and these are the only things that can be said, because the media has now created a system, a successful system of propaganda where people don't even know what the truth is because the lie has been said over and over.
Okay, hold on. We're done here. I don't care. Look, the last thing she said was propaganda. That was absolute propaganda. The media does, sometimes they report on things that aren't accurate. But this idea that you're not allowed to say these things are true. The reason what the story that you're proposing isn't the story that everyone understands is because it's either irrelevant or not true. The fentanyl didn't kill him. It didn't. I'm sorry that you don't agree with it. That's a sad day for you. But that's not how it works. Now, please like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. But look, she's wrong. That was disgusting what we just watched. It should not be celebrated what she just did. George Floyd didn't deserve to die. Ma'Khia Brown did not deserve to die. Because you are doing something wrong does not give the police carte blanche to murder you. That's the takeaway from this. That should have been the takeaway. And if you really did care about those other issues, you wouldn't have spent the first 8 minutes of the video talking about the things you did. Because you contradicted yourself in the beginning. Because that's what you're there for, is to contradict the stories of what happened to these people. Now, please like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter @FacesIdeas, and I'll see you in the next one.